and welcome fellow subscribers and other racing fans. Today with a shorter episode of Setup 101, but let me tell you why. I was practicing with some guys from the ARL Racing League from PCAS forum, and they are having another GT4 race at Monza soon. So I practiced with them and tried some things in the setup. Actually, we had two 60-minute practice sessions, which led to a quite decent setup, and I can't withhold that from you. Okay, so I will show you the setup. We aren't working on the setup, but I just show you what I did and yeah, what I think it's best. Enjoy! So there we are into the setup work, and first thing we are looking at tire pressures. Tire pressures were reduced quite an amount from 165 in the front to 140 on the left side, 150, and in the rear from 155 to 140, and on the right side 130. Okay, first thing, we reduced them because we had very low tire temperatures. That's because of the long straights in Monza. Tires are getting warm in corners and on braking and accelerating. However, in Monza, not so much of that, so we need a little bit lower pressures. Of course, that is a little bit counterproductive, because higher pressure means higher speed, but when I tested it, it was only 1 to 2 kilometers per hour difference. So we're keeping the lower tire pressures, makes the tires around 90 to 100 degrees Celsius in extreme situations. With higher temperatures on track, of course, you know, you need a little bit higher pressures. Why is the left side filled with more air? That's because the left side is more stressed in Monza. All corners which are really strong on the tires are right corners, so left side is a little bit hotter, so we put some more air into these tires. Okay, what do we have next? Brake pressure. I think I reduced it, let me see, yeah, I reduced it from 100 to 90%, although we are driving ABS in the ARL series, or the guys are driving, I was just practicing with them. Brakes were quite strong and caused the car to how can you describe it? You know, the tire wasn't quite able to maintain the grip during the extreme braking. You know, in Monza we have braking zones on the start-finish straight where you are braking down from 250 kilometers per hour to like 40 or something like this, and this is really hard on the tires, and I had the feeling they couldn't maintain the grip with 100% tire pressure. There were some over and under steering I couldn't explain from the brake balance, so I reduced the brake pressure a little bit, and I think that helped the car quite an amount. Brake balance, well, that's how you like it. I put it 1 to the front. That helped me in the Ascari corner, in this fast left-hander. Okay, brake ducts. I had them down as low as 20% before. because that was totally okay for like 3 laps of driving. However, after that brakes got a little bit too hot, so I raised the brake ducts a little bit. I opened them again to 30%, and 30% seems quite reasonable, quite nice. Brakes are at 600 to 650 degrees Celsius after the longest braking zone on the start-finish straight. And that's totally okay for GT brakes. Maybe a little bit on the hot side for GT4, but I didn't notice any problems with overheating brakes. So, well, that's it for this page. Although now we have a traction control slip needed for the curbs. For example, in the first corner, in the first chicane, as well as the Ascari chicane, you get a little bit of lifting tires. They are in the air shortly because of the curbs being quite high. So we have traction problems there, and traction control helps us with keeping the car on track in these situations. Okay, I put it to 12 because on the lower numbers, which were default, default was 10%, so I just raised it a little bit. Lower values don't really make sense because the Ginetta has so much grip. In the normal racing situations, you don't need traction control at all. Next one. Well, fuel load just as you need it. Brake mapping was reduced to 7. That's because it helps you with turning in. For example, the last corner, the Parabolica corner, you need the car to turn in as much as you can. It's really common to get huge amounts of understeer in this corner, and that sometimes has the reason that you can't actually turn into the corner. So reducing the brake mapping helped with that big time. Next thing, final drive. I'm not sure if the numbers are correct for the moment here. I had some bugs while setting up the car that these numbers were changing all the way. Every time I loaded the setup, the numbers were changing. So no guarantee of the right numbers here, but I'm just looking into it. Yeah, at the moment they are looking fine. Looks like we have the default numbers here, and that's what I used for practicing. I actually increased the final drive because I thought, well, Monza, you need that. You need a little bit longer gears for the main straight and something like this. However, turned out that Ginetta doesn't have enough power or not the best aerodynamic to reach faster speeds with longer gears, so default gears were just fine. Just looking for the actual values here, yeah, they seem pretty much okay, so 386 should be the default value, and that's the right thing. Next, there we have some changes. Limited slip acceleration lock. I increased that. Reason for that is for mostly the last corner, the Parabolica, because of the understeering you get there. Usually on the rest of the track I don't need a higher acceleration lock, which causes the car to oversteer a little bit on throttle, by the way. But on the Parabolica it's a nice touch, so you don't have to worry too much about getting understeer. There default it was 30%, so the change isn't that huge after all. Radiator 50%, that's actually at the default value, but actually it's quite on the limit. We are at 105, 106 degrees Celsius for water and oil. So for a race you might want to open up the radiator just a little bit more, maybe 60%. Okay. Bump stops, I reduced all bump stops to 5mm. That helped me with the curbs. They always cause the car to get very unstable. Default values are at 15 for the front and 20mm in the rear, and that makes the car quite stiff over the hard bumps of the curbs, so I reduced to 5mm. Helped it to get the car more stable. I think the dampers were pretty much default, except for the fast bumps, which should be, let me just see, yeah, I reduced the rear fast bumps in this case. The fronts are pretty much the same, and I reduced the rears by 1 click, which is quite a huge click here on this car, so this change does not have to be, or mustn't be, no, that was wrong. It has to be explained, or something like this. I don't know what I wanted to say when I started this sentence. I guess you know that. Next thing, ride height. Important setting here. Naturally, I set it to the lowest value possible at my first try. Well, thinking that helps with aerodynamics, and on a track like Monza, which is generally quite flat out and quite flat, I wanted to say, I thought going down as low as 77 would be a good idea. However, in some corners you hear this scraping noise from the bottom, and that's always a sign that the ride height is too low. And I think I also got problems in the Ascari with the lower ride height over taking the curbs a little bit there. Were not the best idea, so I increased the ride height again to 80 and 90 in the rear. So that's just about 5mm lower than default values. Springs are on default. If anything, I would make them stiffer for Monza, because it always helps with fast corners. However, I thought, again, because of the curbs and stuff, don't go stiffer on them, and so I just kept the default values. Same applies to the sway bars. Steering ratio increased a little bit for my likings. No, actually it's default. Yeah, I thought I increased it, but I didn't. That's just how you want it. Caster. I increased the caster angle from default 5.6 degrees to 5.9 degrees. Reason for that, you can read it here on the side. It makes the car a little bit less twitchy. Yeah. Having almost only straights at Monza, we don't need a too agile car. It's more important to make it more stable. At least that's my opinion. So A little bit counterproductive to that is our camber settings. Decreased from 3.3 to 1.7 and from 2.3 to 0.7. Reason for that is to get a little bit more top speed on the straights. It's only 2 or 3 kilometers per hour. However, it also helps if you want to overtake someone. And remember, the straights are very, very long, so 3-4 kilometers per hour, they can give you 10 meters, one car length, so don't underestimate the power of a tiny bit of top speed advantage. No changes on the toe angles, since the car felt quite nice on turn in. Wonderful settings. Camber angle, I didn't reduce them to zeros for having enough grip in the faster corners. Always a problem in this Ginetta car. Keep the car on track in races. We are doing a race setup here, so not to zero for a time trial attempt. Maybe you want to lower them even more. However, for this purpose, 1.7 is totally fine. Now, one of the most important settings which I found out after like 1.5 hours, the downforce settings. You know, I tried everything from 0 in the front. Okay, let's just take this as granted. 0 in the front from the original 1 in the front. Take it down to 0. We don't actually need downforce in Monza. Yeah, that's right. We need top speed. Yeah, so 0 in the front. Now, what is interesting? Rear downforce. I tried 1, 2, and 3. They are all in the sweet spot, I would say. However, 3 caused the car to understeer in the Ascari, and you win or lose 7-8 tenths in Ascari corners, so that's no fun. Too much understeering, also in the Lesmos, too much understeering when you want to accelerate on the straight to Ascari. 3 is out of question. Then 1. 1 is a thing which is totally fine for hot lapping, totally fine for qualifying, okay? I really like the 1 there. Car is nice. It's a little bit oversteering maybe, but not on a throttle because the car has not so much power. You can turn in very nicely. I recommend a 1 rear wing setting for hot laps and qualifying. However, for racing, again, with Ascari being the most difficult corner, the most dangerous corner, 2 was much safer, and you lose about 2 kilometers per hour, but you gain much security. Yeah, that's my recommendation. Weight bias, all to the rear. That's what I liked most. The car was in the first chicane, for example, the car was quite oversteery on the turn in because the car has huge amounts of front bite. So I just put it to the rear. It's not the huge amount, the huge change, the weight bias. However, it helped to get a little bit more safety, for example, in the first chicane, okay? So, we are through. What that means is we basically have finished here. All other settings I didn't explain. They are unchanged. I hope I could get the message to you, and now we're just going out on track and see how the car is behaving on track. I will show this to you with a short 5-lap race I did with the guys, so no live racing here, just commenting on the previous race. Enjoy this too, and thanks for watching the Setup 101 part of this video. Okay, so now for ending this video we have a small race
Also ich
at
drücke immer die
Monza
Bremse
with
und
this
bevor
setup,
es grün wird, also ganz kurz bevor, gehe ich von der Bremse und gebe Gas.
and
Dann
well,
komme ich
we just watch that and
relativ
I'm
blutlos
commenting
rüber,
on
aber
things you might want to know.
Voll versaut.
also ich bin besser losgekommen als du.
First things
Ja, ich
first,
hab auf falsch.
start. I'm not really a start master in the
Ich hab meine
Ginetta.
Handschuhe vergessen anzuziehen. Scheiße.
Try to use the manual clutch for that quite a bit.
Hallo.
Getting wonderful through the first corner.
Das hoffe ich doch.
Reason for using manual clutch is the quite long first gear
Ja,
and the
haben wir
missing
doch.
horsepower of the car.
Ja.
Ach, die schon direkt. Ja, wir hatten jetzt gerade
Well,
eine Stunde,
Boah, Alter.
traditionally I'm a little bit slow in the first lap because I'm driving too safely. Yeah, that's also possible. One thing I wanted to tell you, don't rev the engine too much. As you can see, when the yellow lights are going on,
Ich hab den voll gehört,
turning
der
on,
angerampelt, aber es hat
it's
geschadet.
time for shifting up.
Scheiße, der BMW-Typ rammelt mir doch hin.
Seeing a wonderful overtaking attempt from Massa here.
Komm, jetzt habe ich den zugemacht. Der wollte innen reingehen. Hast du es gesehen?
Ja, nicht so richtig, nee.
Ich muss nur meine Hand.
The torque is going down with the third green light already. And the horsepower, the power of the car. Seeing a really nice overtake attempt from Massa here. But he was fast into the corner. Dipping too deep. Diving too deep, I want to say. Well, and when the orange lights turn on, the horsepower is already declining, so that's the point where you should shift up. Actually, Massa here in this race had the problem that his pedals weren't attached to the bottom anymore, so he had problems braking and going on throttle completely. This was quite a shame, because this could have been a nice fight, but well, unfortunately you can't have everything. Lap times with the setup described in this video are 152s with a fuller tank, and while racing this could be a low 53s, but I also could drive 52s with this setup. Also in the qualifying or practice session I got 52.6 twice in a row with messing up sectors in each of the laps. This led to a worse lap time actually than it could have been. I will attach the profiler file to the video description so you can have a look yourself. Unfortunately, the telemetry on Monza is a little bit messed up because there are some wrong numbers in it there. But the important values are clearly displayed. Potential best lap time is 152.2. I guess in time trial 51, high 51s are possible with the setup. So after all, as you can see, nice to drive setup, very safe. Not much of a problem to keep the car on the track. Of course you need some pedal work. I always recommend to stay on the brakes as long as possible and being on the throttle at the same time. For example, now in Ascari I'm on the brakes, actually turning in too early here, and until I steered to the right again I was on the brakes and on the throttle at the same time. That keeps the car stable, so the corner can be taken a little bit more safe. It's not particularly faster because you're on the brakes at the same time, but it's much more safe, which eventually over the course of a race will make you faster. Well, that's the third lap completed already. F1 Master has more and more problems with his pedals, so nothing else will happen in this race. And I'll just leave you with the last 2 laps here. I will say thanks for watching and see you next time. Bye bye.
Sound resumed.
Obviously, with this car being a mid-engined car, it is very grippy. However, the initial front grip is missing.